People's Kid, how we doing? It's your boy Kobe back with another video. Hope you guys are having a great day. Today I have a great video for you guys. I'm talking about Demarcus Cousins and the trade with the New Orleans Pelicans. Now I know we're giving our thoughts a little late on the topic because it did happen last week, but I do think there is some stuff that hasn't been talked about yet in detail, so I wanted to at least talk about another perspective that I think is getting bogged down by the idea of how bad the trade was for the Kings. Although they didn't clearly get fair value for Demarcus Cousins, I do think they did at least get something in return, and I credit them for making a deal even when they knew they weren't going to get a fair trade back. So as the title says, I don't think the Kings are going to regret this trade. I have 3 reasons for it. Without further ado, let's just get into that video. When news first broke of the Demarcus Cousins trade and how it went down, almost everybody immediately declared the Kings just didn't lose the trade, but actually lost a deal that could go down in NBA trade infamy.
I think the Sacramento Kings just might have made the worst trade in NBA history. I
mean, it's like watching a toddler cut themselves with a pocket knife and then saying, screw a Band-Aid. Bottom line, if you are a Kings fan, you may want to pour yourself a drink.
Tyreke Evans, Langston Galloway, Buddy Hield. I mean, a heist took place last night, and the Sacramento Kings should be ashamed of themselves.
Now, to be completely honest, when I first heard how everybody else was reacting to the deal, I was pretty surprised. So if we take a look at the complete trade between the Sacramento Kings and the New Orleans Pelicans, you see that the full deal involves the Kings sending Demarcus Cousins and Omri Casspi to New Orleans for rookie guard Buddy Hield, former Kings guard Tyreke Evans, guard Langston Galloway, and 2017 first and second round picks, with the first round pick being top 3 protected. Without any context, I can see how this deal looks pretty rough on the eyes. Although Buddy Hield is still only a rookie, I don't think there's much to make the case that he's a player worth the main haul for Demarcus Cousins. Also, considering the Pelicans still carry about an 8% chance to receive a top 3 pick this upcoming draft, you wonder how the Kings didn't assure the protection was lifted on the off chance they did indeed get a top 3 pick. Having said all this, there is still plenty for the Kings to be optimistic about heading into the post-Boogie era. In this video, I'm going to give 3 reasons as to why the Kings will look back on this trade with absolutely 0 regrets. Because at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to realize the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. Number 3, knowing when to cut your losses.
When you get bit by a snake, you're supposed to suck the poison out. That's what I had to do. Suck all the poison out of my life.
Now, before people wonder what the hell they just watched, recognize that quote is exactly the situation the Sacramento Kings found themselves with Demarcus Cousins. For everyone that considers the Demarcus Cousins trade to be an absolute disaster, I have to ask the question, did you really think the Kings and Cousins relationship would ever work out? Because with all the rumors about whether or not Cousins would get traded for the last 4 years, it really goes without saying there was an underlying reason behind this. Since Demarcus Cousins was drafted by the Kings with the 5th overall pick in the 2010 NBA draft, the relationship between organization and player followed a classic pattern of disharmony that was clearly going to reach a boiling point, with either the Kings trading him or Demarcus leaving on his own terms once he hit free agency. What was unique about the Cousins situation, however, is that you had a player who, amidst all the off-the-court drama, was exponentially improving as a basketball player with each and every new year in the NBA. Taking a look at his stats from the years 2010 to this season, you see his numbers have walloped to heights that are rarely seen in the NBA. Prior to being sent to the Pelicans, Demarcus averaged 27.8 points per game, 10.6 rebounds per game, and 4.8 assists per game, while upping his potency from behind the arc, shooting a respectable 36%. Now don't get me wrong, I will have plenty of fair criticism for Demarcus in this video, but one thing I know is that anyone who makes consistent improvements in their game is getting after it in the gym, period. While blessed with supreme talent, there isn't any doubt in my mind, and most certainly Kings management's mind, that Cousins carries a strong work ethic. And of course, there lies the reason for why the Kings held on to Demarcus for so long. When you see somebody with so much potential in a player like Cousins, you try everything to make it work, even when the implausibility of the relationship working out was staring you right in the face. So instead of trading away Cousins after the first time head coach Paul Westphal sends you home before a game in 2012 for, quote, unwilling to embrace traveling in the same direction as his team, you bring in a new head coach 4 days later. And then when he ultimately has problems with the next head coach, you find another coach, and another one, and another one, and another one. Guys, the Sacramento Kings have had 5 head coaches in the last 6 years, and some people are really trying to say Boogie wasn't the problem? That's where I differ on the opinions of some who consider this deal just another disastrous decision by the Kings. I'm not foolish to think they haven't made their share of boneheaded blunders in the past, whether you want to look at the discarding Isaiah Thomas or missed picks in the draft, but the Kings really tried to make this Demarcus Cousins thing work, and it just clearly wasn't in the cards. When I look past the skill set of a guy like Boogie, I see someone who consistently proves to be a child in a grown man's body, someone who has no business being the leader or centerpiece of any franchise as the number one guy. I'm sure he means well and is a quote great guy outside these outbursts, but quite frankly, his emotional stability just isn't there, and I think the Kings finally realized that. Just like any businessman who makes an investment that is losing him money year after year, the Kings decided to cut their losses and at least recoup something in return, even if it meant walking away at a loss. Number 2, superstar numbers does not equal superstar. This is a point that I have to be careful to make because I don't want the viewers to misinterpret what I'm saying. So before getting into my main point, let me just say that since Demarcus Cousins has donned a Kings jersey, he has far and away often been not just the best player on his team, but one of the best big men in the entire NBA. In discussion of the skill set that makes him the player that he is today, Cousins perfectly blends in his craft the added dimension so crucial for bigs in today's NBA of spot-up shooting alongside his canny ability to body up opponents in the low post with his 6'11", 270-pound frame. So with that being said, there's absolutely no way I can look past his talent and take it for granted. Yet, as the case with similarly talented players on teams going nowhere in the context of competing to make the playoffs, let alone an NBA title, the production that Cousins has put up in his final few seasons with the Kings directly correlated with Sacramento's ineptitude as an NBA franchise. Over the course of 7 seasons in which the Kings have had Demarcus on the roster, they have amassed a record of 188 wins and 345 losses. Even worse, Cousins himself appeared in 298 of those losses, the most for any NBA player for just one team in that time span. So as you can see, while it is great for fantasy basketball owners for Cousins to have a 46-point, 15-rebound night in a loss to the Sixers like he did last month, his big outings are not comparable to the same numbers that are put up by other superstars on winning teams because it doesn't reflect an avenue success for his team. Thus, when considering the Kings were going to have to offer him a 5-year, $200 million contract, and for those who feel math, that is a whooping $40 million per year, it's much easier to see why the Kings were ready to let go of Boogie. Look, I am all for NBA players getting that bread as a result of increased popularity in the sport, but for the purpose of winning games, how could it make sense to pay a guy $40 million who has proven he cannot lead you to the playoffs as the number one guy? While I'm not saying Cousins cannot find playoff success on the right type of team, I don't think he can do it with the role and production he had with the Kings. Think about this for a second. There have been many players who have put up big numbers for bad teams, yet as it often is the case, when these players move to a better team, their numbers drop drastically. There is no better place to look than the case of Kevin Love prior to joining the Cleveland Cavaliers to explain this phenomenon. When Love played with the Minnesota Timberwolves, he put up numbers that approached the efforts of a Lakers Shaq when we account for volume alone. Yet once Love was traded to Cleveland, his role was severely minimized behind both Kyrie and LeBron. Now that isn't to say Love isn't a big piece on a championship contending team at the moment, but the move showed he's clearly not fit for a centerpiece role on an NBA franchise. Since I believe this to be the same exact nature in the way Cousins will need to find team success in the NBA, by my definition, he doesn't qualify for true superstar status like the guys that teams perform as the top guy. Number 1. More time to develop other young core. The last reason that makes me realize this deal between the Kings and the Pelicans isn't as bad as people are saying it is because it gives more time for the Kings to see what they have in their young core. Now, I understand the Kings core at the moment is in limbo, considering they also have a good deal of veterans on the roster, but the moving of Demarcus Cousins allows for other players to gain valuable minutes at a time where winning isn't really at a premium. Just to consider how much space Demarcus took up on the team, consider the fact that Cousins carried the second highest usage rate in the entire league this year, at a whooping rate of 37.2%. As I already mentioned, this usage rate Cousins sustained did absolutely nothing for the Kings in terms of winning ball games. Now that he is no longer on the roster, this means remaining Kings players will now have to make up over 37% of the team's possessions that were taken up by Cousins. While I recognize how some may think this does more harm than good for Sacramento, I really see this as one of the major silver linings of the entire deal. I know guys like Scala Bicieri and Willie Cauley-Stein aren't projected to be future All-Stars at the moment, but considering their hype coming out of high school and into the NBA draft, it definitely doesn't hurt to give them extended minutes to see what they can do. After bottoming out of the 2016 draft lottery for his disappearing act at Kentucky last year, Scal has suddenly found himself in the starting lineup for the Kings, finishing with 10 points, 5 rebounds, in just 10 minutes in their latest game versus the Brooklyn Nets. Given that he is only 20 years old and that he is projected to be one of the best prospects in the NBA less than 2 years ago due to his 6'11" height and nearly 7'3" wingspan, the fact that Demarcus is no longer on the team allows the Kings to develop Bicieri into a contributing NBA player without restricting his potential. Moving on to Cauley-Stein, the added bonus of being able to develop in the low post without having to kowtow to one of the best big men in the NBA while he's on the court will give him the freedom to expand his offensive identity from a player who gets his, as of now, primarily from cleaning off the offensive glass. In the first game without Demarcus Cousins in the lineup, Cauley-Stein erupted for 29 points and 10 rebounds in a win against the Nuggets and showed Kings fans low post moves that they didn't even think he had. If he can combine this with a more consistent jump shot, the Kings may have a strong find in Cauley-Stein becoming more than just an energy big. Of course, this assumes Kings coach Dave Yeager lifts the leash on these players even when they make simple mistakes. Let me make my brief case here. There's absolutely no reason why Scal or Cauley-Stein should be playing less than 30 minutes each and every night. When you have nothing to play for, you must always give minutes for the future and not the present. Yet in discussing these two players who I believe have immense potential currently on the Kings roster, I want to also give my 2 cents on the player who represented the main haul of the Cousins trade. In my opinion, I think Buddy Hield has been given a great deal of criticism from fans and analysts alike for simply not looking like the player that Vlade Divac compared him to. While there is little argument to be made on Hield's potential to become the next Stephen Curry, I think a lot of people are writing Buddy off before realizing the type of work ethic this guy possesses. Playing at Oklahoma for all 4 years during his time in college, Hield saw his scoring average improve every year from 7.8 points per game his freshman year all the way towards 25 points per game in his senior season while pretty much mastering the college game in doing so. In other words, Hield's biggest strength may not be his deadly ability to shoot the basketball, but rather his ability to adjust his game to a level that overcomes the current flaws through patience and hard work. At the moment, Hield has done his part to ease Kings fans' concerns of his total bust potential, as he scored at least 15 points in his first 3 of 4 games with the team. But for him to round out to a player beyond just a marksman shooter, he is without a doubt going to have to improve his playmaking ability. Averaging just 1.3 assists per game currently in his rookie campaign, that paltry number is telling in showing how far he has to come to become the player that extends beyond his shooting prowess. Of course, it's not necessarily a bad idea to model your game off of Kyle Korver or JJ Redick if that's what he wants to become, but at such an early stage in his career, you would hope he could learn to become a bit more versatile. Granted, the Kings made the decision to pay the price for Hield in the form of Cousins, and that's a decision they're going to live with for better or for worse. Having said this, instead of looking at the move as a deal that validates the Kings permanently as one of the league's worst franchise, maybe this is the first move that it takes to be better. Going off the popular idiom, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, I personally think this is fitting for the Kings' parting of Demarcus Cousins. I guess only time will tell if they can build off what I think was one of the only right moves the franchise has made in some time. So there you guys have it, my 3 reasons as to why I think the Sacramento Kings will not regret trading Demarcus Cousins. The moral of the story is, I think you really have to sink low to move up. And I think Demarcus Cousins, as much of a great player he is as a basketball player, I just don't see them winning with Demarcus Cousins. So if that vision isn't there as to how they're going to win with him as the #1 guy, then you have to break it up. And once you realize that, you have to break it up as soon as you can. And of course, in regards to the Pelicans, who are now 0-4 with Demarcus Cousins, I think you're seeing it's just not as easy as pairing up Demarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis and thinking they're just going to be automatic NBA playoff contenders. Both sides of the story are going to take time, and it'll be interesting to see what ends up for both the Sacramento Kings and the New Orleans Pelicans. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like down below. Subscribe for basketball videos. We're going to be doing basketball videos for the foreseeable future. We might get touch into football down the road, but for right now, we're all intents and purposes a basketball channel because we're talking NBA. It's the middle of the NBA season. Anyways, guys, enjoy the rest of your night. I hope you enjoyed the video, and stay cool. Deuces.
Yeah.